This is George Clyde, a Memphis radio and television host for many years, and a great friend of Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. My relationship with Elvis started in an 8th grade music class at Old Humes High School. We went all the way through high school together. And out of high school, I went into radio and television. Elvis got a contract with Sun Records, then signed with RCA Records. Many years ago, I decided to do all I could to prolong his legacy in the world of music. For the past 10 years, I've done a worldwide radio show on SiriusXM satellite radio on the Elvis channel. I wrote a book, very successful, called Elvis, My Best Man. Bestseller, went #1 in America. I'm still very close to Priscilla and the Elvis family. I've been all over the world, seen the most beautiful sights, met some of the most interesting people, and I'm always amazed when I get back home at just how different Memphis really is. And can't help but be proud of all she's accomplished over the years. I've interviewed the greats and soon-to-be greats. But this time, I thought it would be fresh if I visited them in their space, their zone, their sweet spot. Credited as the birthplace of rock and roll, as well as the home of the blues, Memphis is all about the music and interesting people. Music is huge in Memphis, and we'll hear plenty of it. But I'm going to share some things that have never been seen nor heard. For many years, I've had guests from all over the world on my radio and television shows. So look out, folks. We're going to enter some of the most interesting, fascinating homes and studios, juke joints, and 19th holes, jet planes and parties, just to get to know some of these great people and learn some things of which you've had no clue. I'm very proud of my hometown, Memphis, Tennessee, because just recently Beale Street, and rightly so, was named the most iconic street in America. Sorry about Rush Street in Chicago. Sorry about the quarters in New Orleans, but we got #1. Also, Graceland was voted the #1 home in America. My man Elvis, he'd be proud of that. And people ask me about, what is it about Memphis? I don't know, man, but Memphis is magical. A lot of people who come here say, man, GK, I came into Memphis, and as soon as I got inside the city limits, I felt this feeling, man. We have that feeling here. We know how to define it, but it's here. You know, the guy wrote that song called Walking in Memphis. There's a little thing waiting for the king down in the jungle room. You know, he hit it right on, talking about the Memphis Sound. And so many great things here. Beale Street with B.B. King and Jerry Lee Lewis's club down there. And Elvis had a club down there for a minute. Beale Street is a very famous street, and we're proud of it. What's your favorite Elvis song?
Baby, Let's Play House.
Okay.
You were playing it earlier.
Yeah, we just played that, Jake. What's your favorite Elvis song?
My favorite Elvis song, I would have to say, is I'll Remember You.
Everybody's always talking about Memphis barbecue and Memphis music. I'll tell you what, they're very similar. Some is good and some is great, but none of it's bad, mister. How in the world did you become an Elvis fan?
Well, I think growing up, just listening to my parents' music, I was about 2 years old. Elvis was one of the first ones I've heard from the oldies. I fell in love instantly, and I've been hooked ever since.
Well,
so.
You know, because your friends were listening to other types
Right.
of music.
Oh yeah, it's very, very unique, and I'm very proud to have, become in love with Elvis from very young, and I just love the oldies too, and I rock it out. I love it.
Having been a radio and TV performer here in Memphis all my life, people always ask me about the Memphis Sound. What is it, GK, about the Memphis Sound? Well, it's like Elvis Presley once told me. He said, I grew up in Memphis. I was around country music. I was around spiritual music, and I was around rhythm and blues. He said, when I sing it, it all comes out of rock and roll.
How did I become a fan?
Yeah.
I pretty much discovered Elvis all on my own. My parents, none of my family were real big Elvis fans, and my grandparents got the internet, and I was surfing the internet and found a 50s radio station. I had always liked older music. I had a stack of 45s from my great-grandma's attic that I listened to from the 40s and 50s, and I discovered Elvis, and the song You're So Square, Baby, I Don't Care, and Hound Dog were ones that they played frequently on that station.
Elvis Presley and I met in the 8th grade at Humes High School in Memphis in the music class. Teacher's name was Miss Mormon. She was the toughest teacher in the whole school. And to get out of that class, the only way you could get out of her class was if you were in the high school marching band. So Elvis and I were 12 years old, and we go down to the high school marching band and audition. I wanted to be a drummer. I flunked out. Elvis wanted to know what he wanted to play, but he flunked out too. And we both went back to her class. And I'll never forget, Christmas time was approaching, and Elvis raised his hand. And he said, Miss Mormon, could I bring my guitar to school and sing next week as we do Christmas carols? And she said, sure, Elvis. And there were a few laughs in the class because it wasn't cool back in 1948 for a 12-year-old to bring their guitar to school and sing. So he brings his guitar to school, he gets up in front of the class, and he sings 2 songs. I'll never forget it. He was on the left-hand side of the room. I was on the right-hand side. He sang Cold, Cold, Icy Fingers, an old Teresa Brewer song, and he sang a song called Old Ship, which he later recorded and did many times on stage. And from that, we sort of bonded. As we went through high school, I became class president. In our senior class year, we had a talent show. I produced the show, and lo and behold, Elvis won the talent show. I had no idea that he was going to become a recording star, but we had a lot in common. And he asked me what I was going to do, and I said, I'm going to try to get in radio and television. He said, well, if I ever make it, will you play my record? I said, I sure will, Elvis. And so we became fast friends from that day on.
I would just like to say that it's just an honor to be in the presence of Elvis's friend and so many people here that love Elvis and respect him for who he is and the great humanitarian that he was and the real man that he was, and it just it chokes me up every time. So I'm just very, very glad to be here.
You know, my hometown, Memphis, is famous for many, many things. In the early years, of course, it was cotton. Then it became music, and boy, did we take over the world. All the big stars were coming in to record here. You had Elvis cut his biggest record here, Suspicious Minds, Dusty Springfield, Son of a Preacher Man. Neil Diamond cut his biggest record here, called Sweet Caroline. Of course, we got Beale Street, and then we got Elvis's Home, both iconic #1s in America. So many wonderful things happened there, and Memphis has a feeling that no other city has, and I'm so proud to be here. A lot of stars, and not only just American studios, but TMI. They had, Poco, and they had Paul Renner Radios and all those guys cutting over there with Jerry Lee Lewis and James Brown. And then across town, Willie Mitchell was cooking with Al Green and O.B. Wright and Bill Black Combo and all those guys. And then elsewhere in town, they had Sam the Sham cut the #1 record here in 1965. The old Sam Phillips studio called Wooly Bully. A lot has happened here music-wise, and it continues. And thank goodness that Boo Mitchell and his family over at the Royal Recording Studios, that's filled footsteps of Willie Mitchell when he passed away. They've got that ball still rolling. But the key, ladies and gentlemen, in the music world is the song and the feel. And we've got it right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Royal Recording Studios has been around Memphis for a long, long time. And thank goodness Boo Mitchell is taking the reins and still running with it. His father founded that place. It was originally owned by a guy named Joe Coogie, who owned a record shop here in Memphis. And Willie Mitchell was an artist and became in as a producer. And the next thing you know, he owned part of the establishment there. They've recorded so many famous stars. If I started naming names, I'd leave somebody out, but for sure, they cut Stax Records' first hits there. They cut Rufus Thomas and Carla Thomas's first hit at Royal Recording Studios. They cut Al Green. I guess he's the most famous guy who recorded all those Let's Stay Together songs and all those songs he had. But they've cut other people like Boz Scaggs, Keith Richards, Rod Stewart. They've cut a lot of big stars at Royal Recording. And actually, the truth be known, it is only the only real Memphis sound available these days is Royal Recording Studios, because they got that studio still there. They got the rhythm section from the high rhythm section from the studio band, and back to all those stars that played there, and it's all still intact. And Boo Mitchell, the guys behind the control board, the owner there, he's got that magic that his father Willie had. They are doing very well. Oh, Boo, my man.
GK, what's up, George Clyde? How you doing, sir?
I hear y'all have some famous people over here. I want to check some out. Boo Mitchell is Willie Mitchell's son. And he grew up around the studios as a kid. And as I said earlier, Willie Mitchell was the guy. He was the genius. He was the main producer at Stax. He went from being an artist. He had a couple of hit records, Soul Serenade in 2075. But then he just wanted to be a producer. And so Willie started producing. And little Boo Mitchell was right at his side watching with big eyes. And he learned everything his dad was doing. And luckily he was in-house taught, and so to speak. And he still runs those studios at Royal Recording and does a fantastic job. As I said, people recorded there, people like Al Green, obviously, that was their big star. O.V. Wright cut over there, Rufus Thomas, Carla Thomas, Rod Stewart, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. A lot of stars have cut over there. They have quite a good reputation in the recording industry.
This is the original Wurlitz. It's been here since the late 60s, and it's been heard on songs like Let's Stay Together, Tired of Being Alone, Love and Happiness, Still in Love with You, I Can't Stand the Rain. Because we still have the same equipment, the same room, we haven't changed anything since '69. My dad, Willie Mitchell, he worked on the sound from '65 to '69, altering the room, and Tired of Being Alone was the first record cut with the new configuration. So if you listen to high records from the late 50s up through the 60s, you can hear how the sound starts to change, and until we get to the famous, Ann Peoples and Al Green sound that we got now. Memphis has always had a unique sound, and the Memphis sound is largely due to our rhythm section. We had the funkiest kind of bottom end drums, bass, and sprinkled with horns on top, and that is the Memphis sound, and a lot of it was done in this room. Why these records sound so distinctful is because of the design of the studio, and everything is kind of closed in and tight and intimate.
I've been around Memphis, Tennessee all my life, radio and TV wise. I've played all kind of records and heard all kind of artists, but I will have to be honest when I say that Willie Mitchell was the founder of the Memphis Sound. He was an artist, over High Recording Studios, which later became Royal, but Willie was in that studio. He was putting down those licks that later was copied by Stax and other people around the area, but Willie Mitchell kicked off the Memphis Sound.
Well, we've been blessed to have a lot of artists over the years. Chuck Berry recorded here, Ike and Tina Turner, Bobby Blue Bland, James Carr, Charlie Rich, Al Green, Ann Peoples, Seal Johnson, Otis Clay, Keith Richards, Rod Stewart, Robert Plant, Boz Scaggs. We did stuff for Elton John. God, it's so many. I always forget somebody. Paul Rogers recently recorded here. The Wu-Tang Clan recorded here. De La Soul, Two Live Crew, Solomon Burke, John Mayer, Robert Plant.
Bill Black combo. Oh, Albert King actually recorded a song here. The list just goes on and on. It's I always forget somebody when people ask me, so I'll think about it later and go, oh, Uncle Jerry.
About time, Jerry.
Right.
Where you been, man?
I just got a little
I'm
bit
checking
tied
out
up.
Boss Skaggs.
Well, you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
I'm about to
Oh,
probably
here, boo.
But you got Boo, you got this magical
I know,
equipment,
yeah. I wish you many nights were
this
with you,
magical place.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I think smash, man. I like the title too, called Memphis.
Yes, sir.
That's the name of my show,
Yes, sir.
Memphis Connection.
Well.
Yeah.
So right here is Al Green's microphone. Every one of his hits was recorded on Let's Stay Together, Love and Happiness, everything. And we don't let anybody sing on it anymore unless it's Al, unless they're real special like Robert Plant, John Mayer, Buddy Guy.
Whose records have I played that went on to become famous? Of course, we broke Sam the Sham. Sam the Sham was a local guy in Memphis, and I was working for a station called WHBQ at the time, and we went on even before MGM picked it up and made it a smash, and it was a master for them.
The success part of it is what people see, and that's what's recorded in history. But I mean, who better than you know how long it took us? I mean,
Yeah.
you're one of the few guys that, I mean, would bring you something and you'd play it and you'd play it, and but yeah, it's adversity drives you to perfection, I guess.
Good thought there.
I was the first disc jockey in the world to play a Jerry Lee Lewis record, and Bill Justice with Raunchy, and a lot of those acts that came out of Sun Records, a lot of guys that came out of Royal Studios. I was recording with some of those guys I played, but I played Paul Revere and the Raiders. I played Mary Lee Rush first. She had Angel of the Morning. There were so many, like Dusty Springfield and Roy Hamilton and Elvis Presley, by the way. I was the second guy in the world to play an Elvis Presley record.
ZZ Top was his guy Billy Gibbons used to live in Memphis.
Yeah, Billy lived here. They made their first 7 or 8 records here over at Hart.
They were discovered in Memphis at the Overland Park show. Well, the same stage Elvis played on.
Well, I do a show, goes nationwide on SiriusXM satellite radio. We broadcast live from Graceland every Friday, 4-hour show that's recorded then repeated again on Monday night and early Wednesday morning. When I first went out there, we had 600,000 subscribers. Now we have 25 million subscribers to the Elvis channel out there at Graceland. I do that, and I get mail and calls from all over the world, celebrities. We call them. They know who we are. They take our calls real easily. And then the radio show that I do is sort of a spinoff. It's called the Elvis Hour with George Klein, and it's been on Memphis Radio, #1 rated for many, many years. And it's a 1-hour show of me telling stories, interviews, old interviews with Elvis, bringing in celebrities and what they think of Elvis and such.
Okay, now David, the story about Flash and the board of directors playing for Elvis's New Year's Eve parties.
Well, you were nice enough to bring the guys that work for Elvis. It was Richard Davis,
Alan
and
Forrest.
Alan, and Charlie.
Jimmy Kingsley.
Kingsley would come down to the Thunderbird where we were the house band for 3 years.
Right.
And they liked us. And Elvis, I believe, had been going to the Manhattan Club, if I'm not mistaken. On
Well,
New Year's
the
Eve.
Thunderbird. Well, he went to Manhattan, Thunderbird, and then TG.
And then
TJ's.
in 1967, going into 68, New Year's Eve 67, he rented the Thunderbird, and we played for Elvis then. The next year, 68, going into 69, we played.
Jerry Lawler is a great friend of mine. Known him for a long, long time. But I tell you what, man, this guy's got more toys in his house than Toys R Us.
Jerry, I've known you for many, many years, and I'm a great wrestler,
showbiz, singing and bands and all that. But I'd heard about your art talent.
A lot of the artwork that I've done over the years is stuff that I just was a fan of. There was a great famous artist named Frank Pulciani who did all of these fantastic science fiction type paintings, and a lot of these things that you see there are sort of kind of copies of his paintings. Whenever I would see something that I really liked and I thought was really good, I would sit down and try to paint it and see if I could make it as good or maybe even better than the one I was looking at. Same thing with like this Santa Claus over here.
Oh, yeah.
That's originally a Norman Rockwell version of Santa Claus. And of course, down below it is the Coca-Cola Haddon Sunbloom version of Santa Claus. And so then those are kind of my versions. The one up the Santa up there, I did a few years back for the Boys and Girls Club of Memphis, and they took that and made a Christmas card for it, and then used that to raise funds for the Boys and Girls Club of Memphis.
Sure, you got a lot of beautiful stuff, artwork in here. Downstairs by the Batmobile, I had no idea.
Speaking of the Batmobile, check this out. I did this for DC Comics. This is a pencil drawing that I did. That, if you look at it closely, that's me. I posed. That's me as Batman and me as Robin.
Really?
So yeah.
Well, how'd you pose and draw yourself?
Well, I just took a picture of myself, selfie with my camera phone, and then drew it from that.
The Jerry Lawler that you meet in person and you hang out with is completely different from the Jerry Lawler you see in there as a wrestler or a commentator. Jerry Lawler really is a nice guy and a very talented man. He's a great artist. I had no idea he was that great until we went to his home and he showed us some of his work there. But Jerry Lawler is more than just a wrestler. You know, he's a writer. He's an artist. He has a lot of things going for him.
Speaking of superheroes, and one of your heroes and my heroes, of course, was Elvis.
That's true.
So look, I took the opportunity to do this picture, Elvis as Superman.
Look at that, gosh. You know, Jerry, Elvis is really hard to capture. A lot of people bring me pictures of him, and I said, well, it looks a little like, but he was hard to draw because he changed his look so many times.
Right, exactly.
But that's one of the best I've ever seen, Jerry. Well, that's got to be a Graceland or somewhere in the Elvis collection.
Well, I want to give you one of these to keep, and I've got the original down in my museum at the Resorts Casino, and actually a colored version of it. But yeah,
I'm gonna have that frame, man.
Cool.
Yeah, Jerry. Oh man, thank you so much. But Jerry, you know, our show we try to work a lot of music into it, and people asked me once. They said, George, why did you have Jerry Lawler on your Christmas music charity show? I said, well, Jerry can sing, and he's got a band, and he's a hot item, you know, so he's going to draw some people. And you did, but until then, I'd never, you know, Jimmy Hart, I think, set it all up for us. And I know you could sing that good.
Well, you know what? It started out back in the mid-'70s when they gave me the first original, what we call in the business, a push. I mean, they started featuring me as the main, the main star wrestler. And at the time, I was the big villain. I mean, they hated me. I was going against guys like the fabulous Jackie Fargo and guys like that everybody loved. And so a good friend of mine, Jim Blake, who has kind of been involved in the music business his whole life, he came to me and he said, you know what we need to do? We need to take you into a studio and we need to find a right song and you need to cut a record. And we'll release this record. And he said, whether the fans, he said, I promise you they'll buy it just to break it right in front of me. Because what he had seen us at the wrestling shows, and fans would actually go out and buy my picture and then come up to the ring and just tear it up in front of me. And so Jim came up with the idea of doing a record. So we did. And I told him at the time, I said, Jim, I'm not a singer by any means. He said, we'll find a song that'll be perfect for you. It'll be basically talking and a little bit of singing. And he said, I'll bring in some great musicians and surround you with it. So we went to, I'll never forget, we went to Ardent Studio at the time. And he had guys like Jim Dickinson there. He had some members of the Gentry's band. And Jimmy Hart was there to do some singing. And so we put this record together called Bad News. And it was, it fit me perfect to a T. And sure enough, we put it out and most of the people did exactly what Blake said. They would buy the record and just break it to infuriate me. And of course, that would make me so mad that I'd make them go out and buy another one. I'd just start screaming, don't you dare break my record. And of course, they'd go out and buy it, break them right up, But that's how it got started. And then it was fun. And so we did some more.
Because you're the guy that got Jimmy Hart into the wrestling business.
I did. Jimmy Hart, of course, he was famous, in the music business from the Gentrys.
Keep On Dancing.
Keep On Dancing, big hit song, and they were on your talent party show a lot. And so Jimmy showed up at that first recording session, and I was a big fan of the Gentrys too because we went to the same high school.
Right,
he was a few
Treadwell
years ahead of me, but so once we met, he was such a charismatic guy and such a flamboyant, over the top, so full of energy. And I just thought at the time, I said, man, this guy might make a good corner man for me. He'd be a good manager. So I approached him with the idea, and at the time, him and his group were singing at the Levy Lounge. I don't know if you remember, they were like the house band at the Levy Lounge, the Gentrys, and not doing too great financially at all. So he jumped on the chance. He was a big wrestling fan, and I put him in my corner, and man, the rest is history. Then he hooked up with Hulk Hogan, went up to the WWE, and matter of fact, Jimmy still works for Hulk Hogan.
He does?
Yeah, down in Tampa, Florida. Hogan has a place called Hogan's Beach down there that is just phenomenal. Big restaurant right on the beach there in Tampa, and Jimmy lives there. He lives in the hotel there, and he's like an official greeter at the restaurant. He's a great gig for him.
Well, if you say hello, he talks 30 minutes.
Yeah, you ask him what time it is, he'll tell you how to build a watch.
Right. Jimmy Hart, lead singer of the Gentrys, had a big smash called Keep On Dancing. Jerry Lawler, right here in Memphis, Tennessee. But I love your car over here. The car, it looks just like the original car.
Yeah, the original was built by a
George
guy
Barris.
that you knew very well, George Barris.
Yeah.
And the original Batmobile that they used in that 1966 TV production just sold for $4.1 million. Yeah, and some real multimillionaire guy bought it and set it as a centerpiece in the middle of his living room. That's how big a mansion the guy had. But anyway, I came across, and you're right. In 1966, I was still in high school, and I was such a big fan of the Batman TV show that I hate to admit this, but I pretended to like this girl in high school because her family had a color TV. My family didn't have a color TV, so I would go over 2 days.
Was this Memphis?
This was in Memphis. We were back in Memphis this time, and Batman was on 2 days a week, and so I would go over after school and hang out with her. But really, I was just there to watch the Batman TV show in color. And so, yeah, when I came across, I was doing a show up in Knoxville when Adam West was booked on the show, and this guy named Matt Dollar who builds these things. Yeah. He had the show there. He had the car there at the show for Adam West, and I just, my girlfriend Lauren and I just were looking at it. We kind of fell in love with the car, and he said, "Well, I could build you one." And I'm sort of an impulse kind of guy, and I said, I'd love it. And I said, I'd buy that one. And he said, no, I want to sell this one. This is my, personal one, but I'll build you one. I said, well, you know what? We exchanged numbers and everything. Anyway, the story goes, like a couple of weeks later, he was taking care of his father who had Alzheimer's disease, and he had to put his father in a nursing home and needed some quick cash. Yeah. He called me up and he said, I'll make a deal on the Batmobile. So I did the deal over the phone. They brought it down on the truck and put it right here in my driveway.
I was approached by Random House, a big publisher in New York, and they said, George, it's time that you should write your book. And I went along, I said, hey, there's too many books out there. They said, no, we have a different angle. I said, what's your angle? They said, you have quite a career in broadcasting out of the Memphis, Tennessee area. A TV show, radio show. You've been master of ceremonies for a lot of big stars. You've traveled with Elvis Presley and all. Now, what we want you to do is bring your career in conjunction with your story called Elvis, My Best Man, and tell that story too. And I thought about it, I said, man, you got a deal, because I've been wanting to write my own book, but I never thought about how I could combine the two. And so I signed a deal with Random House, and we wrote the book. It took us about 2 years, along with my co-writer, Chuck Priscilla. It was a bestseller. It was Kindle. Kindle's the electronic books. And it went #1 about 6 months ago on Kindle in America. And it's in its 6th printing now. It's printed in the German language because Elvis served over in the army over in Germany. It's printed in, it's released in England. It's released in France, all over the world. The book has just hung in there. They call it, it's got shelf life. The book has legs. It just keeps on selling.
GK, what's going on, man?
Hal Lassie, what's up, brother?
Everything, where you been at?
Around the world, I'm going again.
Oh, well, you should have been here earlier, man. I had had all these people wanting your book signed.
How's my book doing?
It's doing real good. It's good.
Number
Everybody likes this book, but they want to know who the guy is with you. I kind of tell them that's the king of rock and roll.
You're a trip.
Yeah, George, what are you wearing?
Well, Memphis basketball,
well,
man. It's Memphis music, Memphis basketball.
Well, we all love Memphis basketball, either the Memphis Tigers or Memphis Grizzlies. But you're in Lansky's, clothed to the king, man. You can't come in here wearing those schmatties, man. I got to dress you up, man. I got to flip your collar, man. I got to make you look cool in the pool, man.
Get your whip and I'll pop the trip.
Okay, but
get on the scene with a record machine.
But in a little while, we'll walk over there and get you a nice shirt and pop the collar, man. You know, you can't be looking like Ned in the first reader, man. You got to be looking like GK, man.
All the way.
GK, all right. The Jeeker in your speaker.
The Jeeker's in your speaker.
So what do I owe this pleasure to coming down today? You going to sign some books for me?
I'll sign all you want, all you sell.
Okay, all right.
You sell them, I'll sign them.
You got your pen ready? You got some ink in there?
I got my Sharpie,
You got some lead in your pencil?
I got more than that.
Okay, all right.
I got my Sharpie, and I can sign every one of these books.
Okay,
for
great.
you.
Yeah, we
How's
sell a
my
lot
book
of
doing?
them. It's doing real good, George.
Good?
Everybody wants to, to know GK, know the story and everything.
You know what I like also, Hal? You got this sweater over there, Elvis wore in Jailhouse Rock.
Right.
At the swimming pool.
Right.
Man, it's a great looking sweater.
Yes, the Jailhouse Rock sweater.
Yeah.
And the other day, I never take off, but last Sunday I was laying on the couch and flipping the channel, and I turned on a TCM Turner movie channel, and I didn't know you were in the movie Jailhouse Rock. I looked back in the crowd, you were there, man, laughing and giggling.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a hell of a movie, wasn't it?
It's a good movie. That's my first motion picture debut.
Was that the first time you were ever in Hollywood?
Yep. Jailhouse Rock, exactly, man. It's a wonderful time too. But if you missed, you got to have a freeze frame to see me in the picture.
No, I knew who you were.
You saw me.
Yeah. Memphis has so much history. I've seen it all, coming through the stores, and we've seen it all. And of course, you've seen it all. You've been there.
But when you say how Memphis music is the driving factor on that.
Oh yes. It's a combination of everything. Of course, it's all spearheaded with Elvis.
There's no other city in America like Memphis, Tennessee.
I don't think so.
This is Mongo's Castle?
Absolutely.
Is that the official name of it?
It is. 1893 it was built.
Wow.
Now look, I'm going to play a little song for you.
This coat, you changed coats on me.
I did change coat because this is my music coat.
That's your music
yes,
piano playing coat?
It's my, like Liberace, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Prince Mongo is a guy that I've known for many, many years. He moved to our city here in Memphis, and he opened up a men's clothing store. And he had a little chimpanzee in the store called Coco, I think that was his name. And I had another television show at that time called George Klein's Talent Party. It was a musical show, much like an American Bandstand type thing. And I went down there to buy some clothes from Mongo one day, and I asked him to be on my television show. So I said, under one condition. He said, what's that? I said, you bring the chimp with you. The chimp did some cute tricks, and he brought the chimp down, and we interviewed him, talked to him. That was my first meeting with Mongo.
Hey, Prince, can you really play piano?
I can.
What are you going to play?
Hold it. Let me get this thing sanctified.
Is that the magic dust?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You have a name for it?
Yes, it is. Spiritual dust.
Mongo's got this bag of dust. It's supposed to heal people. It's supposed to do magical wonders. And it gets all over your clothes and everything. And I don't know about the magical dust thing, but I tell you what, I told Mongo, I said, hey, Mongo, I don't know about healing and talent and all that jazz. I said, but your magical dust in that bag there, I think it's good for making cookies and maybe cakes and bread and stuff.
What are you going to play?
I'm going to play Zambodian music.
Zambodian?
Yes.
Oh!
Zambodian music is really out there, mister, and I think Mongo plays it very, very well. But you know what? After being around Mongo and watching him do some stuff on that piano, do some Zambodian music, I've come to think, well, you know, it's not as more crazy than some of the stuff that's on the market these days.
Is that the Zambodian waltz?
Okay. I have now called the spirits, and now they are probably at the bar.
Can you play a little bit, a whole lot of shaking or something?
Oh, yeah.
Let me hear it.
I'm going to tell you, man, that piano was clearly out of tune.
Well, what is the ducks doing over here?
Well, I can't help that. The ducks live here.
Somebody shot them.
I know it. They were moving.
There are real bullets in there.
Well, sure it is. You
Wow.
can't understand what happens around here. This is a spiritual place.
I love it.
Yes.
What is this man's name?
Well, I'm trying to keep him from shooting you is what I'm doing.
The guy is very, very smart, very educated, and he knows exactly what he's doing.
You're going to see where all the ghosts and the earthlings gather. Dancing, all dancing in here. Dancing over here. Nothing but a DJ studio right there. More dancing right here. This is where all the spirits are. George, it's really nice that you came into the castle. And being here, I know you have a spiritual feeling.
Right.
And you know that all my spirits I called in with that magic horn.
Hit that horn one more time.
Well, yeah.
Maybe some didn't hear you. All right.
They answered me.
What'd they say?
They're glad you're here.
They heard the horn, Spirit,
Yeah.
and I can kind of feel them in here.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, there's thousands of them here now.
Thousands?
Oh, thousands. They were lined up in the trees. You couldn't see them.
They heard we were coming out.
Oh, they knew we were coming out because I sent the call outside.
How long you been living in this castle, Prince?
I've been here about 33 years.
Yeah. The Snowden family built it, a very wealthy Memphis
Industrialist.
family.
Mhm.
And then it's been passed down. In 1893 it was built?
Absolutely it was. And if you know that the father lived over there, across the street, they
Okay.
had a tunnel that went from here
Did they really?
to the
Where's the
parents'
tunnel?
house. Well, it's closed off now. In the old days, you don't know this, but I do because I was here. But when the plantation owners were visiting each other, a lot of times they would be attacked by the demons, and they would be killed, some of them. So they were scared to travel at night. But if you would look at any of the movies or any of the history, you will see that most of the plantation owners traveled in the early afternoon, and before it got dark, they returned. So these parties that they had, most of them were in the early afternoon hours or the early evening hours. And most of them were within distance of each other so they could travel as groups going back.
Other than Jerry Garcia, did anybody else famous stay here?
Grant stayed here.
Grant did?
Oh, yeah. When he left Feelings, he came here and stayed here.
Is that right?
A couple of nights, yeah, with the Snowdens.
The story that I understand, Prince Mongo, is this house is worth millions.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Worth millions.
Yes, it is.
And you own this house.
I do.
And what are you going to continue to?
Oh, I'm giving it away.
You're giving it away?
Oh, yeah. I'm giving it away. I have given it to a charitable organization, and they're in turn going to find a charity that will come in here and open this to the public so that people, young kids, we would like to come in here who would make a wish and would like to come here and fulfill their wish.
What about the chicks? Any young ladies come down?
Oh, a lot of them do. When I was running for mayor, I never finished a speech that somebody didn't come up by the many hundreds and say, Mongo, you make more sense than all of them put together. But I never won an election.
But you got 20,000 votes once.
Well, yeah, I did. That scared them to death. But
are you ever going to run again?
Yeah, I'm going to run every time. For all of my friends, all of my planetarians, they were coming to Earth.
You know what? I remember when you ran for mayor, Prince.
Oh, absolutely. I did almost won the election.
I've received a lot of awards in my time, but I will have to say that the biggest honor and the biggest award, to my opinion, that I ever received was being selected by the Elvis Presley family. That would be Priscilla Presley and Lisa Marie Presley. They asked me if I would go to New York and accept and make a speech for Elvis. He was one of the first inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And man, I was beside myself. I couldn't believe it because here I'm going to New York. It's the first induction of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All the 10 stars were inducted that night. There was Jackie Wilson, Sam Cooke, Little Richard, the Everly Brothers, Jerry Lee Lewis, Ray Charles. The list goes on and on. And Elvis was the last one honored, and the two sons from John Lennon, Julian and Sean, were up there, and they presented me the award, and I made a speech for Elvis. And I'm not bragging, but I was on that night, and I think I made the best speech